Let's get into it then, y'all. What's good? What's good? It's your boy Sticky Old Styles. We definitely live right now. UTB station, Underworld Radio with your boy Sticky Old Styles. I'm trying to get these bugs right so I can start really going heavy on these shows. We're gonna be going on location in a minute. You're gonna see me in a few different states, doing a bunch of shows. Like I said, I'm looking for a battle league right now. Any battle leaguers out there that want to link up and do, like a live stream battle league. I'm looking out for that right now, as well as these artists, these priority artists that I'm promoting right now. Shouts and salutes to all the priority artists, everybody that's been submitting music, everybody that's been following the show and helping promote the show, man. I got nothing but love for all of y'all. Like I said, I'm still working bugs out. We got a lot of different shows we about to put together. Um, the Debate Me show is definitely coming too, man. So for a lot of people that, talk a lot of politics and, that really care about what's going on in the world, that's going to be a show for y'all. It's going to be less hip hop. It's going to be more talk. It's going to be more networking and interacting. So for the people that, really is about that life, definitely tune into the Debate This show, and that's coming soon. So you're gonna see me promoting that. For all my new followers that don't really know what's going on, this is an online television station, but we got different shows that'll be coming on and off of here. A lot of sites that I go on, or they do ban a lot of things that I do. I got a lot of obstacles that I got to deal with as far as, what I'm doing, because we on so many sites at once. So some of the sites don't approve of a lot of the things that I put up here, whether it's music, whether it's the way I talk about the political things and, the videos and all. But this is the outlet, man. This is where y'all come to express things. Y'all got videos. I see a lot of people posting videos up, brutality videos, abuse videos, poverty videos, stuff like that. That's well, this the place to put that stuff at, so we can really talk about it and find some solutions. A lot of activists that's out there. We for y'all too. You know what I'm saying? So this is what it's about. You're gonna see me posting a lot of different stuff on here. So make sure y'all follow, like, share, subscribe to UTV station, whatever site you on. Try to be on more than one site, because like I said, they be trying to ban things, and when I start really going hard and talking about the things that I'm about to be talking about, it's going to be a big deal. You know what I'm saying? So I expect to be banned on a lot of things when I start really going hard, but it's something that we got to do, and we need this outlet. So I'm building this outlet, and like I said, we be having little bugs, little things be happening where I got to reroute my plans and make it a different way. You feel me? So right now, this is what we doing. About to go into these priority artists. These are the artists that I'm promoting right now. Um, like I said, man, I got an obligation to these artists, man. I told them I do exactly what I'm doing, which is promote them. And any artist that deals with me knows I tell y'all all the same thing. I can't assure you no record deal. I can't assure that you're going to be the next thing, but I can assure you that you will be heard. So that's what y'all see me doing, man. I'm playing these artists' music. Hopefully y'all enjoy what these artists are doing, because I really feel like they're going harder than a lot of the artists that you listen to on your FM stations, and I don't listen to radio at all. So that's just what it is. So we're going to get into these priority artists right now. I'll be back to chat with all of y'all out there. The request lines is not open right now, even though I might open them up sometime during the show. I'm not sure just yet how I'm going to do it, but we do got the request lines. The chat rooms is open for all the people out there. Y'all can definitely hang with us in the chat room. And that's going to be that. So let's get into the show, man. New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. Priority artists. I think I'm loaded up on all my sites. So let's do it then.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com.
Shouts to my homie Jumo, Fresh Flow ENT. Commotion is definitely the next wave. Let's get it, y'all. Let's go.
Yo, Sticky Dio Styles, what up? Underworld. LaCar BYOB. Stanhope House. Cooler Cafe, Conscious Youth, Danny Clinch and Asbury Park. Farmer Boys. First Famine. Supreme Alliance. I appreciate all y'all for putting me on.
Underworld.
Shout out to Rel. Bugs in the South Jersey Cyphers, what up? But how come I ain't never get put on the Jersey Fresh Jam or Art All Nighter, the Marsden House Cyphers and all that? How come you ain't put me on?
Yeah.
What up? I know y'all see me. I be in y'all town, man. What's good?
Let them know how
I
you
don't get
feel.
it. It's like I'm knee deep in freedom of speech, freedom of weep. It's easy to creep, count sheep in your sleep. It's, nah, man, I ain't gonna do that.
You can get them.
It's like I think they kind of scared. It's like
they scared of you, bro. Let them know
you
what emotion do.
You need to. I don't know, man. It's like
I need you to talk for
it's like you lock your bars before they can break out. Shoot back a paparazzi and call that media takeout. So who's next to catch this tongue lashing from the city where even kitties sticky for gun stashes? Smoked up, knocked off, blown away, blunt ashes. Let's see who can run fastest. Head of the street, fam, running with the best. You the end of the week, man. WTF? 3X banging in your cipher, time's overdue. If I rhyme over you, here's my rhyme overview. What commotions spew, mostly roasting and toasting you. Many y'all call commotions leading a chosen few. Kinetic energy flow with a century. Freeze MCs like mad MP3s on PCs. You be killing your memory mentally, not a word to think. Razor sharpen your pencil, punish you with the pad and pen. Then I just murder the ink. No more of silence, just violence, sirens, sad music, violence. Don't believe me, then try it, then get your goonies to hire men. Meet the Trenton version of Murder One. Bite a pen, hobnob with goblins. Maybe it's Leviathan, inciting the rioting. Well, come on, invite him then. I'll be ready to fight with them. So I built myself up, chewing on these one-word punchlines. Vitamin. So what this tyrant is trying to insinuate that I'm watching disintegrate right from my dinner plate. Principle of the matter is I'm here to administrate the abolition of mainstream. Time to integrate, lyrically renovate, innovating the best weapons. Commotion putting words together is a death sentence. You can't call me out from dead zones. Go to your cemetery and urinate from the headstones. I get it, headstones. If I ain't dead homes, there's a resurrection of real rap in your headphones. Kill.
Yes.
Oh man, Old Styles, bro, I think they scared, man.
They scared of you,
I know y'all see me going city to city. I be in your city, y'all didn't even invite me to your site for your show. It's all good.
Real talk.
It's just little old Q. I mean, I'm a humble dude. I mean, I just spit from the heart. I show love, man. I don't know, man. I give credit where credit is due, man. You don't see me out with the whole fresh flow camp and all that. That's time to integrate. I just mostly roll dolo. Y'all ain't scared to integrate lyrically. I mean, it's not like I'll out rhyme you or anything. It's like would I really out rhyme you and your whole team? Well, on second thought, maybe you should be scared. Kill.
Coming to you live for Underworld Radio. It's your boy Stiggity Old Styles. Live for Commotion, Fresh Flow ENT. Y'all scared, man. Let's go.
Doing it for my street niggas. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. Taking risks and prospering is how you spell trap. Say you got that pat, nigga, where your bells at? Where your scale at? Tell me where your mail at? Say you in the streets, nigga, you can't sell that. Shout out to my niggas, UPS and by the load. Cocaine or Jetta down, they taxing for the blow. If the shit legit, then better believe we copping more. Soon as we get them bitches go. I'm up and down every street, every night and day, ain't got time for no sleep. Just wanna get paid, oh my dough is gon' beat. Junkies on parade, they want that fish, hold a fillet, oh. Doing it one for my street niggas. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. Just let them know the track gon' beat, nigga. I'm capping and I'm jugging and finessing. If I let you shot with me, it'll be a blessing. In the streets, I'm passing out a blessing. Try some shit, yeah, I told illegal weapons. Ay, in the trenches, I'm for real. Yeah, I get it how I live. OG rule, have my youngest put that stick off in your grill. In the trap, it ain't no chill. Try me get my grip for real. If you owe me better payment, or I'm slime with the steel. Now she blowing up my phone, cause I dripped her in Chanel. I ain't even want the pussy, she just helped bring in them bells. It's by getting that paper trail and check clientele. I give them hell, can't you tell? I'm up and down every street, every night and day, ain't got time for no sleep. Just wanna get paid, oh my dough is gon' beat. Junkies on parade, they want that fish, hold a fillet, oh. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. I'm doing it one for my street niggas. to let them know the trap gon' beat, nigga.
I keep it realer than most, word to my nigga crack. I only roll with the squad, I know they got my back. And we ain't gotta get distracted, cause I got it on me. I put a hater on his back, trying to slide up on me. I ain't your meal ticket, this ain't a come up. Before I was a stunner, was a gunner. Catch a nigga slipping out back, tear your front up. Get rowdy like some Brooklyn niggas mobbing through the tunnel. When it come to dope, used to move it by the bundle. I get it by the G, grab the rock, triple double. The ladies call me HG, my cousin call me Trouble. You know how I play, I bring the hammer to the rumble. That was back in the day. I be chillin', fam. I don't do the feelings, I'm a grown ass man, I'm about winning. Ever since I got on the hot, I stopped sinning. No, I ain't perfect, but I be thinking when it's all said and done, was it really worth it? 50 bands, 100 bands, fuck it, man. All a nigga know is hustle, man. 10 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, 1,000 grams. And we got it from the muscle, man. We can't stop. We take blocks and we flood them, and we hate cops. When they ride by, say fuck them. This is real life, real pain, real struggle. When you know we still standing, all a nigga know is us. And we turned up, cause my daughter getting bigger. Always give her what she needs, so she don't never need a nigga. And my son's smart, a little lazy, but I'm working on it. I made a lot of mistakes, I'm still learning from it. Don't ever go that route, it ain't a purpose for it. It's a new day and age, fucking unemployment. Young black entrepreneur, you still gotta hustle, but you ain't gotta risk your freedom just to make a couple dollars. If I could do it again, do it the same way. Shit happens for a reason, so I can't complain. But I be damned, I let my younger throw his life away. I'm praying 5 times a day, trying to have supper. Going hard for the times we ain't had supper. When I was locked behind the wall, man, my kids suffered. My hood missed me, youngins love me like a big brother. Never lead them astray, that's on my mother. 10 bands, 50 bands, 100 bands, fuck it, man. All a nigga know is hustle, man. 10 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, 1,000 grams. And we got it from the muscle, man. We can't stop. We take blocks and we flood them, and we hate cops. When they ride by, say fuck them. This is real life, real pain, real struggle. When you know we still standing, all a nigga know is hustle.
Any stealing of his property, we're damn good too. But you can't be any geek off the street. Gotta be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep.
It was a cold dark night, a bloody red moon. It was that night they killed my nigga. Wish I was dead or die too. I was 1,000 miles away, but I swear I felt your every wound. So I signed a nigga in blood for the shit they did to you. For asking in the question, took initiative, made a move. Kid they mama, sister, cousin, and auntie, the whole crew. And ain't nobody making money, shut down the avenues. Anybody looking funny, bring the pressure to them fools. And we ain't stand shit, in this case it ain't no rules. If anybody looking funny, apply the pressure to them fools. Load up the transit, go and shoot up a block or two. And ain't no pee for your mama, look what you done brought it to. But I'm tripping on a whole nother level. That's what they say about me, but let me tell you, yeah, when I catch it, I'ma bang you. Then I be out here like a little nigga, that shit dangerous, yeah. And they begging for a caper. Niggas out here hungry, do anything for the paper, yeah. I'm a side of home invasion, innocent people leaving babies. And don't forget that I don't love anymore. And don't forget my heart will never be the same again. And don't forget that I don't love anymore. And don't forget my heart will never be the same again. My enemies got in suicidal situations, never witnessed the wicked shit that they was facing. And don't you play with me please, I ain't got no patience. Get out of character and kill my reputation. And on my knees I pray to God for the safety. I carry a Glock, I swear that bitch ain't got no safety. As the clock tick tock, I'ma kill you before you take me. And my surgery box, I'm rocking out, I hope they see. 1,500 niggas, so you know I'm his own. And you know I got that pistol, I ain't never alone. And you know a nigga drippin' straight design on my clothes. And you'll never catch me slippin' cause I stay on my toes. And you'll never catch me slippin' cause I stay on my toes. And you know I got that pistol, I ain't never alone. But I'm trippin' on a whole nother level. That's what they say about me, but let me tell you, yeah, when I catch it, I'ma bang you. Then I be out here like a little nigga, that shit dangerous. Yeah, and they begging for a caper. Niggas out there hungry, do anything for the paper. Yeah, I'm a side of home invasions. Innocent people living babies. Don't forget that I don't love anymore. And don't forget, my heart will never be the same again. And don't forget that I don't love anymore. And don't forget, my heart will never be the same again.
When you've been through some shit, you gotta let this shit out. Shit real out here. Shit real out here. But listen, it's my baby.
Came from nothing, I never had a helping hand. I was grown by the time I had a dad. Mom struggling to feed us, we was doing bad. Let it elevate me to a better path. I understand how it feels to be alone. 13 out here, living like I'm grown. Grandma told me I had to get it on my own. Out here in these streets, I ain't even have a phone. But she's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's coming through. I understand, I understand, I understand. I understand, I understand, I understand. She's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's going through. I understand, I understand, I understand. I understand, I understand, I understand. In the morning, she a nurse. Bed at night, she a stripper, she at work. She hate the fact that she gotta twerk just to put some extra money in her purse so she can feed her kids. Baby father, he don't feed them kids. He rather run the streets all night doing bids. He ain't never see them kids, but he love them bitches. Bitch got him lying, 32 his body dank. She's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's going through. I understand, I understand, I understand. I understand, I understand, I understand. She's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's going through. I understand, I understand, I understand. I understand, I understand, I understand. Gotta stay prayed up, none of this shit is made up. My fam got hit from 2 blocks and almost laid her. You can't break me, I'm too solid. Even if I crack, I won't break, I'm too powerful. I watch you niggas fold, under pressure. Fans knocked on my door, I ain't telling you. And that's a big fact, I do this shit for my brother. A-gang, all day. They don't know what they put me through. I do this shit cause it make me remember you. Miss some deep conversations, look what you made me do. Miss some deep conversations, look what you made me do. She's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's going through. I understand, I understand, I understand. I understand, I understand, I understand. She's feeling like nobody understand what she's going through. She's feeling like nobody gives a damn what she's going through. I understand,
We going hard,
I understand, I understand.
Underworld is in the building, y'all. This is the movement, y'all. Underworld is the movement, y'all. We going heavy on them right now. For all of y'all tuning in, shouts to everybody tuning in. Please click those like and follow, share, subscribes, all that shit for a brother. We live on a lot of different sites, and we trying to really get these views crazy right now. So shouts to everybody hanging out with us. Like I said, this is the Priority Artist Show for all the artists out there. I'm playing your music tonight. If you're free, stop by the show. I'm thinking about opening these request lines up so people could call in. You know, we can really get some discussions going live on air. So I'm gonna keep that in mind. Like I said, hit me up. Y'all know how to hit me up. Let me know if you're gonna stop through the show. For all the people that's tuning in, supporting the movement, shouts and salutes to y'all. We're gonna keep this music going, man. It's the new age of hip hop and R&B with your boy Stickity Old Styles. New age of hip hop. Let's do it, y'all.
Let's go.
Yo, we know you talking, but I can't hear shit. I ain't got nothing to say.
to say. I ain't got nothing to say. I ain't got nothing to say. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face.
I keep a bad bitch in a hell on. Never leave the house without this Teflon. Gotta hop out, stick too long. Shoot you in your shit, make you go home.
I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face.
The fuck out my face. I keep a bad bitch in a hell on. Never leave the house without the Teflon. Gotta hop out, stick too long. Shoot you in your shit, make you go home.
Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say.
Ain't about money, don't bang my line. I don't wanna talk, don't waste my time. This shit gon' sell, I'ma take my time. Worry about your, don't worry about mine. Where the fuck was you at when I ain't have a dime? Posted on the corner, yeah, I was on the grind. In and out of court, facing penitentiary time. Niggas playing chess with a penitentiary mind. Niggas flipping niggas and these niggas dropping dimes. Niggas flipping chickens and the bitches flying high. LA confidential and they coming by the pound. Ain't no 28s, got a copper by the pound. I swear be a bell when that bitch bust down. Gotta lock them door when that bitch butt down. Motherfuck the middleman, he just got cut out. Got them bitches for the 12, plenty more to go around.
I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face.
I keep a bad bitch in a hell on. Never leave the house without this Teflon. Gotta hop out, stick too long. Shoot you in your shit, make you go home.
I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. Out of my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face.
The fuck out my face. I keep a bad bitch in a hell on. Never leave the house without the Teflon. Gotta hop out, stick too long. Shoot you in your shit, make you go home.
Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say. Please get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say.
Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio, come on.
Coast to coast mix. Let's go.
Don't make me overthink, cause I've been throwed off lately. Shorty ass softer than the mink, then I'ma go oh so crazy. Bro got dirty dishes in the sink from whipping up oh so crazy. And I'm busy sipping on this drink, got me moving in slow-mo, baby.
What you gon' do with it? Alright, talking about you get into this paper, nigga, what you gon' do with it? You gon' blow it or you save yourself for later, nigga, what you gon' do with it? Oh, you rolled it up the bezel, huh? Going up a level, huh? You dancing with the devil, huh? What you gon' do with it?
No, I don't see much. Capping, no, I don't see much. All you niggas is lunch. I've been getting money since teeth was 6 to my point in that ass is so fat, titties perky up front. She gon' pop on a perky, she fuck up for brunch.
She loving a nigga you chasing for months. I don't gotta go make her my woman crush. Still make her feel brand new. Makeup on my shirt, damn, woo. Shorty on my head, shampoo. Pulled up with a stick, bamboo. It's time for niggas to elevate. I'm about to go get me another plate. Even though I done already ate, I'm about to go get me another. Don't make me overthink, cause I've been throwed off lately. Shorty ass softer than the mink, then I'ma go oh so crazy. Bro got dirty dishes in the sink from whipping up oh so crazy. And I'm busy sipping on this drink, got me moving in slow-mo, baby.
What you gon' do with it? Alright, talking about you get into this paper, nigga, what you gon' do with it? You gon' blow it or you save yourself for later, nigga, what you gon' do with it? Oh, you rolled it up the bezel, huh? Going up a level, huh? You dancing with the devil, huh? What you gon' do with it?
Underworld.
We doing this up right now, y'all. Underworld style with your boy Siggity O Styles. Let's keep it going, man.
How you want it?
Shout out to my homie Slime Gang Woozy, man. Let's go, y'all. Underworld shit.
Shorty wanna ride my way. I'm lit. Shorty wanna ride my way. Oh shit. Shorty wanna ride my way. 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 Shorty wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride my wave. Shorty wanna ride my wave. No, shorty gon' ride that dick. Yeah, I was just stunting on the gram. Yeah, let me Snapchat that shit. Whoa, niggas be hating a lot. Ounce of codeine and I stay on the block. Bag me a bitch and I stay in the cut. I pull up with that thing, see me whipping the drop. 357, replay with that Glock. Calling this jacket, she fucking or not. Notice the wave and she all on my dick, but you gotta be bad, we don't fuck with no thoughts. Riding my wave, I'm just trying to get paid. All in the club and I'm on that Duce. Got that shit lit, start hitting my wave. Got that shit lit, start hitting my wave. Whoa. Shorty wanna ride my wave. I'm lit. Shorty wanna ride my wave. Oh shit. Shorty wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride my wave. Up in the club, we about to get lit. Bottles on deck and we blowing that piff. Hundreds some models, see one I'ma get. I got the drip out the walk in this bitch. Whoa, I just pulled up in the Jag. Straight off the line, had to go on my bag. Chasing these checks and I'm ducking these bitches. I'm all on the jet and I'm getting that lag. Whoa, is it the flick of the wrist? No, look at this shit on my wrist. Oh, all of these diamonds, they shining, can't even see what is the time on this bitch. Whoa, I'm in the club with the strap. Looking for me, but you know where I'm at. Niggas on lean, I ain't fucking with that. I got the juice, I ain't giving it back. Whoa, shorty wanna ride my wave. I'm lit. Shorty wanna ride my wave. Oh shit. Shorty wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride my wave. My wave. Shorty wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride, wanna ride my wave.
CMG. Hold up. BGMG. Hold up. It's your boy Sinatra, man. Yeah. You tell me that I'm wrong for the way I feel. I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. I worked so fucking hard just to make it feel. Hold up. Hold up.
Oh, try to fuck the same hole that they seen in my drop. Get on your feet, be about your issue, you can get what I got. You know, if you still hating, I'm still part of the plot. 17, you was in school, I was still studying pot. At first, I broke the rules, I was toting them blocks. We don't tolerate disrespect, give a fuck you gangster or not. Kept serving, even though them crackers were watching that spot. I remember putting niggas in power, couldn't serve a dime rock. We were posted on the corner, shooting dice to shortstop. And that night, that T-shot Terry, it was school on that block. Envy and jealousy making the means you forgot.
Worked so fucking hard just to make it here. Moment of silence for the ones we lost in the field. I thought this shit was signed and sealed, but that wasn't the deal. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong for the way I feel? I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. I worked so fucking hard just to make it here. Moment of silence for the ones we lost in the field. I thought this shit was signed and sealed, but that wasn't the deal. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong for the way I feel? I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up. I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up. Hold up.
I swear I sacrificed my all.
BBSG, nigga. Soprano gang. Soprano lifestyle. Ice Coleon, nigga.
Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Brightening in the rollie iced up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Mozzie in the Bentley. Skirt, skirt. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Prada, Louis, Fendi, Gucci shopping. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Trap doing numbers all summer. Run your bands up. I run my bands up. Trap doing numbers. Caught that new Bentley. It cost me $200. Louis, Fendi, Gucci shopping while I'm getting blunted. Cashed out on the sack. Had to blow the money. Ran them bands up quick. Keep a nigga stunting. golden smile. I'm a golden child. I run them bands up. Grab my bitch a new rollie in the Benz truck. So we gon' live it up. We don't give a fuck. Trap doing numbers, we gon' run them bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Riding in the rollie iced up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Mozzie in the Bentley, skirt, skirt. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Prada, Louis, Fendi, Gucci shopping. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Trap doing numbers all summer. Run your bands up.
I need 10 hands to count it up. Run through the bomb, then I mount it up. Trap house, got a nigga powered up. Breaking down a leg quarter. Now I'm doing algebra. Water clear diamonds round my neck. All designer stuff. Run my bands up, ridiculous. Off the stove top. When I drop that straight cleats and shit, the whole hood cop. Machine is on my feet with the lock. Watch me moonwalk. Pitch the 4-way out the trap. All the softballs. Run them bands up all summer. I don't never sleep. Crunching down them numbers like a nigga work at Wall Street. When the sack touchdown, everybody gon' feast. Plug gon' go, so I keep a zip on my feet. Yeah.
Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Riding in the rollie iced up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Mozzie in the Bentley, skirt, skirt. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Prada, Louis, Fendi, Gucci shopping. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Run your bands up. Trap doing numbers all summer. Run your bands up.
Said it had you scared. Can't believe that you thought I would hit and leave. When I'm trying to hit you with a ring and set of keys. Long talks, long walks. Baby, let's get married on the boardwalk. Hard on my sleeve like a cuff link. Brag about you just to see what the others think. No clothes, no shoes, you a perfect fit. Type of woman that I'm trying to build my family with. Wake up, see your face, and I thank God. All these groupies, all these thoughts, but I beat the odds. Love conquers all, us against the world. I used to want them all till I met a good girl.
I've been lying to keep you from this pain. Now you crying, and you know that I'm too late. I've been lying to keep you from this pain. Now you crying, and you know that I'm too late.
Sex the best cause we both real passionate. There's nothing wrong with you giving me your ass to kiss. Actually loving it, you love that I'm into that. Take my tongue out, then hit it from the back. Switch positions, like we got promoted. You coming extra hard, I know you can't control it. Head pulling, choking like we in a fight. Assault with a deadly weapon, beat you with the pipe. And your sex drive damn near match mine. On a scale from 1 to 10, you about a 9. All the telltale signs of a love connection. Still the butterflies just opening your text message. Love and affection, girl, you good in both departments. Everything I ever searched for from top to bottom. You my better half, better yet my whole heart. Can't believe when I met you I was cold-hearted. Wow.
I've been lying to keep you from this
talk. I came in here straight slick talk. Slick talk. I came in here straight slick talk. Listen, if I slide shit, I glide like walking loud, coughing till I'm in the coffin, smooth with it. Slick talking, always talking shit, so slick, so sick. You can watch my clock tick tock. My time is now. Pass the rock, let me rock the spot now. With these vibes, new niggas throwing in the towel. I knew niggas like my style. Turn up the dial, UTV, we the new sound. Now you know now they got me trapped in the 90s. That's why you couldn't find me. Finally drop a new MP3 CD. You hear me, but you don't feel me. Fear me, really, I bring reality. At MCs, clap and burn. Grab MCs like STD disease. Kids don't play with me, cause I'm gon' hurt somebody with this shoddy. Probably squad deep with my underworld fleet. Don't get stomped by 50 feet on repeat. Now that's what I call defeat, but y'all don't hear me though. Feel me flow, but don't steal my flow. Get Malcolm X at your next show, so special. Not like Ed, I got it made off tracks I made in the shed. When I spit, I talk shit, no debate. Don't hate the king, it's great. Slick talk, came in here straight. Slick talk, slick talk, came in here straight. Slick talk, slick talk. I came in here straight. Slick talk. Always talking slick. Why you always popping shit? Why you always talking slick? Why you always popping shit? Everybody wanna know where the water coming from.
I can rest now. Finally got that shit up on my chest now. I can rest now. I finally got that shit up on my chest now. Couple semi-automatics and some texts now. Hit the house and double back and lay the rest down. That FNN designed to eat right through that vest now. Bitch, I done got this money up, now it's a check now. And you ain't gotta fuck with us, but you respect now. It ain't no love, ain't no fake, that we at your neck now. Better hold your head down.
If you take my guns away from me, I'm still crazy. I'm still insane. If you take my guns away from me, I'm still crazy. I'll go cuckoo insane.
Permanent insanity, fuck with my family. Promise you death, I kill them all.
Add up the fat,
minus the calories. Niggas chicken deep fry my hoe.
In my dream,
it's a white witch riding my back on a unicorn. Forming lines and some pink pigs, nightsticks and some uniforms. Unapologetic, no remorse. Life short, let us take a course. Expect me to speak on some shit. Just tell them bitches she wasn't that important.
if you listen, I teach you some shit.
Just pay attention, not a penny more.
Just remember, I leave you with this. Evil thoughts lead to dirty hearts.
I can rest now. I finally got that shit up off my chest now. Couple semi-automatics and some texts now. Hit the house and double back and lay the rest down. That FNN designed to eat right through that vest now. Bitch, I done got this money up, now it's a check now. And you ain't gotta fuck with us, but you respect now. It ain't no love, ain't no fake, that we at your neck now. Better hold your head down.
If you take my guns away from me, I'm still crazy. I'm still insane.
this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. I'm dripping water, all you see is hella diamonds. Don't stare too long, this shit'll blind you. I'm a boss man, strategic ceilings, exquisite meals. The lifestyle that I live without a deal. Exotic cars, exotic bitches. Breitling watch just to match my new Bentley. All fully loaded, everything really wet. Another 40,000 customized around my neck. Came up from nothing, now I write my own checks. Boss man, ice man, boy I stay dripping wet. CEO shit, rockin' VVS. Drop the whole bag on a white Rolex. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, I'm really fucking wet. 30 on my watch, another 50 round my neck. Blow the bag on that ice, boy, that's a check. Boss man, ice man, all I do is flex. Sun all week, Bentley's first South Beach. Had to cop the new piece, same cause the ocean sea. With that be said, I'm dripping wet. Everything BVS, upgraded on my chest. If your partner disrespect, then his ass getting wet. Everything dripping wet. Watch, ring, grill, charm hanging from the necklace. Then his ass getting wet. Everything dripping wet. Watch, ring, grill, charm hanging from the necklace. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet. All this ice on me, it got me dripping wet.
Starkin, IBM Starkin, Malik Brothers. Counting me out, now they all another disbelief. That can't be Habib, you kidding me? We slide through, decorate the scenery. It's law, smell the loot, ENT. Millionaires in my phone like, let's get it. We meeting up for lunch out in Tribeca. Every step I take me to another level. Law, I say this, it's only getting better. We popping up on stages all around the world. We the best thing the boys ever seen or heard. Serving rap like drugs on the street corner. It's victorious to watch how my team performing. I continuously make a good first impression. All I know is bars, session after session. We get the club lit 0.2 seconds. Got the DJs in the club owners checking in. I got a group of pretty women standing by my table. And they all sing, they'll serenade you. Check the stats, man, we winning by a landslide. House built from the ground, I used to sleep outside. Now I'm typically known as a big tipper. All they ever say is, sir, can I take your picture? I don't get backed up, I'm paying mine forward. And I've been ahead, but still got the passion for it. We in the flashy foreign, flash across the interstate. Sipping Remy, trying to watch the road, smoking haze. Pull up on you at the light like what's lifing. Hit him with the criminal sign to show pride. I be stand out like a sore thumb. Down south, popping bottles up in Club Plush. Counting me out, now they all another disbelief. That can't be Habib, you kidding me? We slide through, decorate the scenery. It's law, smell the loot, ENT.
Coast to coast.
Let's go.
It's funny how it's a lot of things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. Me and my brother ain't spoken 4 years and feeling blue. My uncle died, he had a plan, I gotta carry through. I'm on my lonesome, God forbid not to lose a focus. My daddy suffers hard condition, my mother's getting older. My best friend is chain gang for doing strange things. Being young, we lost direction, so we gang bang. My record 13 track long, yeah, I got several. My homie had an accident, his partner here was several. Under influence since 15, everybody knew it. Could have to deal with their gym, but somehow I blew it. Can't stay stuck in the past, I gotta manifest. My homie short on that cash and shot a man to death. The situation the ones we need to reflect. A celebration of that, be a reality check. Hope feelings mutual, no telling what I would do for us. Back against the wall with no choice but to execute this plan out of my head. Right hand left the left without a clue. Tried to what you call that when karma hits, it's overdue. Click, turn sick, once a trick, hit the best of you. It is what it is, my homie died as a vegetable. Damn. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. Maybe it's the close calls I lived through, the sinkholes I fell through. Most of all, the sky is spacious, forever gracious to awaken out my coma. Anticipating the stories I live to tell you while searching for a clear view. Close my eyes, never get fed. Tight hands accept no chain. Let your altar change another man. But now I'm putting them together. I'm in praying state. No longer in playing state. There's a place upstate where man is seeing you no pay. Flipping calendars, still awaiting these days. The universe expanding. Hey, so call me universal. You can hand me my Grammy, or I can skip the whole rehearsal. A lyric reversal, no longer writing, now I'm verbal. Lyrics that cause murder, and life's a deathbed. Slow deterioration, chronic effects of a meth head. Still walking proud in these streets I was blessed in. Was searching for my next thing. And when I'm alone sometimes, I still have to close my eyes and think of you. Shit, man, I think I'm in tunnel vision. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. When I'm lonely, I close my eyes and think of you. It's funny how I survived the things you put me through. Shed my love to the precious ones that never grew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew. Misunderstood by so many, some I never knew.
Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Come on. Underworld Radio.
Soprano gang. All red everything.
City, nigga.
Blood, Suwoo, nigga.
Ice.
Straight like that.
Straight like that.
I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. Whip it, cooking, selling dope, nigga. I've been route running. Trap doing numbers, so I know my clout coming. Pussy nigga go to spill when the Draco come out, get the running. I'm a street nigga, bitch. I keep street nigga bricks. I'm at the trap doing numbers. My whole clique getting rich. All we know is count commas. Route running, making sticks. My sauce insane. Baby girl say that she love my flame. Boss man, ice man, soprano game. Cheat code, red code, all red, everything. Catch me at the bando, serving up hella cane. Everybody know boss man, get it all in. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. I've been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I've been
route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. Whip it, cook it, sellin' dope. Nigga, I been route running.
Straight drop, got the city in the chokehold. Watch the bird fly straight out my dope hole. Bust the whole thing down in the traffic zone. Run routes with the work till the ground's gone. Keep banging that shit out the bando. Niggas know they gotta come to the back door. Jules lined up at my back door. Nigga, I swing my trap door. Make it fall to the bottom of the glass bowl. Fish scale bricks come with a passport. Whipping up dope in my tongue force. Jug up shit I transport. Pull up on your nigga, do a drop off. Pull off on you with the top off.
I been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. I been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. I been whipping, cooking, selling dope, route running. Route running. Whip it, cook it, route running. Whip it, cook it, selling dope. Nigga, I been route running.
Underworld.
Coast to coast mixtapes.com.
Let's go.
We're going in, y'all. Underworld Radio. New Age of Hip Hop and R&B with your boy Siggity Old Styles.
And that night, that T-shot Terry, it was school on that block. Envy and jealousy making the means you forgot.
Work so fucking hard just to make it here. Moment of silence for the ones we lost in the field. I thought this shit was signed and sealed, but that wasn't the deal. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong for the way I feel? I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up, hold up, hold up. I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up, hold up, hold up. I worked so fucking hard just to make it here. Moment of silence for the ones we lost in the field. I thought this shit was signed and sealed, but that wasn't the deal. How dare you tell me that I'm wrong for the way I feel? I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up, hold up, I swear I sacrificed my all. Hold up, hold up,
I swear I sacrificed my all.
Spotlight. Indie Artist Spotlight Show, man. We going heavy on them right now with your boy Siggity. It's the New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. Fuck yeah, FM. We definitely doing it up like that, y'all.
Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio.
Let's keep it going, y'all.
Underworld Radio.
We're gonna keep it going like that, man. We banging on them right now.
Two, I eat and I see with them killers, yo. Ghost ride, road runner. I promise you don't want no beef with yo. Grave digger, grave filler. You show them that this and they eat some fish. Run up in the church, kill a preacher man, but teaching my people that evil shit. Eye for eye, two for two. I eat and I see with them killers, yo. Ghost ride, road runner. I promise you don't want no beef with yo. Grave digger, grave filler. You show them that this and they eat some fish. Run up in the church, kill a preacher man, but teaching my people that evil shit. Everywhere hell and vice versa. If I told you go to hell, would you say I curse you? If your people set it up, then that shit was on purpose. And if I kill a nigga, I was born a murder. Ran down on these niggas. Choppers out, no helicopter. Brains splattered on the wall. Every shot it like a heart stopper. Nigga can't judge to kill. Did it all in my brand new Balenciagas. Playing plot, strategize. Rip it wifey, then I go kidnap it, mama. Eye for eye, two for two. I eat and I see with them killers, yo. Ghost ride, road runner. I promise you don't want no beef with yo. Grave digger, grave filler. You show them that this and they eat some fish.
Run up in the church, kill a preacher man for teaching my people that evil shit.
Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. I eat and I see what them killers do. Ghost ride, roll run 'em. I promise you don't want no beef with them. Grave diggers, grave fillers.
You show them that this and they easy fit. Run up in the church, kill a preacher man for teaching my people that evil shit.
That shit go hard as fuck right there. Shouts to the brother Jakim Muhammad in the building with us. Much love, Fresh Flow ENT. Shouts to Commotion Hood Superhero coming soon. It's a new age of hip hop and R&B, y'all. Let's get into it though. This how we banging them right now, y'all.
Coast to coast mixtape.com. Let's go.
Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers.
It's a hot summer, it's a hot night. Trap doing numbers, jugging broad daylight. Plug on speed dial, know they bout to take flight. Got 20 of them things on back order. Can't wait to touch down and drop them in the water. Couple homeboys already placed their order. Summertime coming, bout to cop a new whip. Spend another 20,000 on designer gear. Trap off the chain, got us switching up the game. Fish scale, dinner place, Columbia cocaine. Numbers real low, still get you clean blow. It's a hot summer, all this shit gotta go.
Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers.
Dad's beating up my block, got my trap hot. But I'm still on the stove, working 4 pots. Got the scanner on, so I can hear him coming. Drop the 125, now my trap jumping. Heard they park down the street, so I reroute the money. Niggas banging up my line, trying to cop something. Troll hot as fuck, but the money running. Trap spot doing numbers, cause I'm still bumping. I'm just getting to it, nigga, like fuck troll. Sell the dope before I can get it out the bowl. Got them looking like zombies on my dope stroll. Got my ball main jeans filled with bang rolls.
Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers. Hot summer, hot night, got them crackers swollen, man. But the trap still doing numbers.
Coast to coast mixtape.com. Let's go.
Keep it going, y'all. Keep it going. Shouts to Miss Juju, man. She about to go in for the underworld right now. That's how we do in the underworld. New age of hip hop and R&B. It's your boy Sticky Old Styles. That's me. Follow me on all social sites, man. Let's go.
Haters wanna see me fail, bitches wanna see me lose. My ex nigga want me back, had to cut that nigga loose. I'm so focused now, homie, ain't no stopping me. I got him on some shook ones, Mark deep. I killed that quiet storm, yeah, silently. I'm not Nicki, I'm not Rim, I'm not Cardi B. I'm not Fox, I'm not Kim, just a new MC. So when y'all mention female rappers, that's including me. I'm like matter with a microscope, you can't see. But I will matter just like Adams, and I'm not Eve. I'm Albert Einstein with these prophecies. Martin Luther King having all these dreams. I foresee a lot, do y'all copy me? I'm foreseeing motherfuckers not stopping me. I break this shit down scientifically. And now I don't make statements, my trick. This is for the have and the have nots. And Jesus walked the water, could I tread on top? Top, top, could I tread on top? Top, top, could I tread on top? Top, top, could I tread on top?
And Jesus walked the water, could I tread on top?
They put the pressure on me and it made a diamond. I know my time is near, that's why I'm still grinding. We may be talking greatest, maybe talking greatest. I heard you had some words for me, let me demonstrate it. I'm really that real, I'm really from the Ville. I still love the smell of bullet shells, let me chill. See how Brooklyn made me, her life is crazy. I'm just trying to make my son $1 million, baby. You know I got that slick talk, that slick talk. I'm in the major leagues with the big dogs. Niggas can't fuck with me, not at all. I'm a pit on this beat with lock jugs. With lock jugs. With lock jugs. I'm a pit on this beat with lock jugs.
UWR priority artist.
The new age of hip hop, pop, pop.
Heard that bag will change your life, I'm trying to change mine. Bitch, I don't want you no more, I'm not gonna change my mind. They reppin' gang signs, I want them dollar signs. They ask me how I'm living, I live a life. I'm getting money and you know it. Push the button, push the phone, ain't no fighting, I'm not Floyd. I just shoot if I get annoyed, yeah. Yeah, fuck the plug, I'ma sock it, ain't no pressure, I'ma pop it. I'm gon' throw it, she gon' drop it, yeah. Yeah, switch that Nike with designer, ain't no doubt, but I'm on fire. I was trapping like the wire, yeah. Yeah, switch that Honda with a form. My bitch admit me when I'm torn. My life was hard, I was torn, yeah. Yeah, I hit that booth, I just be fitting. Nigga hate like they want some friction. Had it, I got it, my witness, yeah. When I went, bro, they wouldn't pick up. I can't believe my dog switched. Can I vent? 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 I swear these niggas make me sick. I swear these bitches make me sick. I'm sipping sir, but I ain't sick. Just about to roll it, that shit sick. Yeah, we going through hard time. Man was on the space and time. So much shit be on my mind. I'm chasing dollars, fuck a dime, yeah. Yeah, I bust it down with my signs. We gon' get it one more time. Now I'ma pass it to my son, yeah.
They say life a bitch, I had to tame mine. If I can go a time, I live the same life. Never gang bang, but I got gang ties. And if my partner aiming, I'ma aim mine. God forgive me, I'm a sinner, can't be sitting, gotta flip on. We need money like a printer, like no gesture, like a sprinter, yeah. Yeah. All my bitches, they be bitching about me fucking other women. I'm just living my your business, yeah. Can I vent? 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 I swear these niggas made me sick. I swear these bitches made me sick. I wanna see my mama rich. I bought her Aston for my bitch, yeah. Going through our time, now we living in the prime. Want $1 million just to sign. Yeah, yeah. I bust it down with my slime. We gon' get it one more time. Let me pass it to my slime, yeah.
Heard that bag will change your life, I'm trying to change mine. Bitch, I don't want you no more, I'm not gon' change my mind. They reppin' gang signs, I want them dollar signs. They ask me how I'm living, I live a life of crime.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com.
Underworld.
I'm a top draft nigga, I'm the #1 pick. I stay high as a kite. My nigga G shit, and I only smoke the best. You better believe it. Red Gang, Flame Jang. My nigga, that my shit. Yeah, I be smoking, I be burning, just like chimneys, and I don't need nothing else. Just give me the weed up in my lungs, up in my chest. Yeah, that feels the best. Endo, never outdo. Endo is the best. Yes, never no bap, cause that's bullshit, that's product. And to a G like me, that's not even labeled narcotics. Whoever you getting it from, you need to tell your plug to stop it. And there's plenty love out here if you need someone to shop with. It's that G shit that you can ride to. This that G shit that you get high to. Nigga, this that G shit, better believe it. Nigga, this that G shit, you don't wanna see it. That G shit that you can ride to. This that G shit that you get high to. Nigga, this that G shit, better believe it. Nigga, this that G shit, you don't wanna see it. My pops was a 70s cat. He was a gangster and I remember him telling me that I got the gift for the gab and I can have what I want at any drop of a dime. These niggas be playing for keeps and don't be dropping no dimes. And that shit stick with me, nigga. Every day that I ride, I'm always thinking about pops. My nigga stay on my mind. I'm in the dirty world, my nigga be watching my grind. G shit, my nigga keep me out the blind. That G shit that you can ride to. This that G shit that you get high to. Nigga, this that G shit, better believe it. Nigga, this that G shit, you don't wanna see it. That G shit that you can ride to. This that G shit that you get high to. Nigga, this that G shit, better believe it. Nigga, this that G shit, you don't wanna see it. My pops was a 70s cat. He was a gangster and I remember him telling me that. That G shit, nigga, this that G shit. This that G shit. This that G shit that you can ride to. This that shit that you get high to. Nigga, this that G shit. Nigga, this that G shit. Top motherfucking draft in this bitch, nigga. #1 motherfucking picks. I'm talking about DP on the beat, on the beat, on the beat.
Hey, Ice.
We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall, we keep cash, so we spend it. New bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall, we keep cash, so we spend it. New bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. We do numbers all summer, we get it. That new bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. The trap house, it cashed out on them chickens. The pot hot with straight drop, it keep us in the kitchen. We trap out and run routes, we running up them ditches. We cook up, we roll up, it's just the way we livin'. You gangsta, you know us, ain't no need pretending. Stacked up, racked up, niggas know we winning. The Fendi and Gucci keep a nigga spinning. That Bentley, that's money, that mean I'm getting plenty. We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall, we keep cash, so we spend it. New bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall, we keep cash, so we spend it. New bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. Get money all summer, we get it. The trap jumping, we counting them digits. The block hot, but we stand in the kitchen. The plug callin', they know we copping all them chickens. We ballin' all summer, they know that we winning. 200, that's guap, I blow it on that Bentley. 10 chains on my neck, you know I'm getting plenty. That Louis and Gucci, it always keep me spinning. I grind hard and shine hard, that's why I got that Bentley. I'm stuntin' all summer, you niggas can't fuck with me. We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall, we keep cash, so we spend it. New bag, I blow cash on that Bentley. We get money, we get it. Drop in the pot in the kitchen. In the mall. summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be shining all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be ballin' all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be stunting all summer, all through the bidding. Popping bottles, pocket guapi, yeah, I'm stunting with it. Bentley parked out front and I'm flossing in it. 10 chains round my neck, cost a cool milli. I be dumb out on these suckers, got them looking silly. 35 pointer settings in my rolling bezel. Never traded in my Breitling cause it looked better. 10 rings and 10 chains, yeah, I had to kill them. Trap doing numbers all summer for the Skrilla. All he know is flexing, I be stunting on him. All summer, all year, I be shining on him. Flex, flex, I be grinding on him. Flex, flex, big timing on him. I be flexing, I be with it. I be stunting all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be shining all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be ballin' all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be stunting all summer, all through the bidding. Why they hating on the niggas? Cause I got a bag. Ay, real street nigga, I ain't never had a flag. I got my shooter in the back, ain't no time to count. Ay, we be ready to spin your block like we running loud. Ay, just pulled up in that Bentley. Ay, got these niggas looking mad, looking silly. Ay, I don't think they never seen a $250,000. We be in and out of traffic trying to get it. Ay, 10 racks in the bag, we ain't seen no cash. Fuck nigga, they be hating cause we getting cash. Ay, pulled up in that Bentley. Ay, pulled up in that Bentley. I be flexing, I be with it. I be stunting all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be shining all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be ballin' all summer, all through the bidding. I be flexing, I be with it. I be stunting all summer, all through the bidding.
Pretty face like Monica. Instagram model, about 2 million followers. Going through a comment, she a cougar like Vivica. Like what I saw, so I went ahead and hit her up. Didn't take long before she sending me the nudity. Talking all freaky about what she wanna do to me. Soaking in the tub, she like to hit me up on video. Get out, walk around, no kids, plus she live alone. Twerking in the kitchen made me wanna eat the groceries. Said she sleep naked cause she like to let the box breathe. 38 double D's, take up half the phone screen. Went and got them pierced, asked me if I like a nip ring. Checking out a tongue ring, asked her what the mouth do. Said she don't like to brag, just make some time and come through. Cool, now I'm in the coupe, headed to a residence. Tearing off my tailways, soon as she let me in. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. You can keep your hubby, baby daddy, and your friends with benefits. All I want is one night, we can keep it innocent. No titles or relationships, just a little taste test. Watch you swallow all the kids, it's what I call safe sex. Ma, I got a plan B, C, D, E, and F. Gotta keep my options open, trying to see who do it best. Club like the Columbine, scouting for a draft pick. Run a few practice drills, see if you can take dick. Looking for that grip with the drip that make the bust quick. Pull it out, snatch the rubber off, then kiss the tip. You the real MVP, face of the franchise, rookie and the best player, both at the same time. Show up when it's game time. I bet you got a fan club. Lights, camera, action, like you doing it for Pornhub. Jail food, nasty. MJ, yo, you changed the game. Nickname you Brady, cause you headed to the Hall of Fame. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach. The mouth in the box, good and put me in the game, coach.
I be mad at you, I just need my space. At you, but I just need my space.
Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I break up with you. When we get back together, they can't break us apart, cause we meant to be together, two birds of a feather. She rockin' with me, I'm rockin' with her. A little makeup says to make it better. She get mad at me, a little temper tantrum. Beat her ass like a baby snack on the ass one. Yeah, that's my bae, yeah, she give me a headache, yeah, but you gotta love her, stay the better by my side. You know I trust her, yeah, you know I trust her, yeah, she right here by my side, yeah, you know I cuffed her, yeah, you know I cuffed her, threw her in them handcuffs like the police officer. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things. Sometimes I'm in my feelings. I'm dealing with emotions. Cause I'm in the streets, and we gotta eat, gotta provide for you and me, girl. I'm running it up, and you steady giving up on my love. And I'm running it up, gotta do what's best for me, girl. I'm just tryna be great, can a nigga be great? Let's be great with me, girl. Cause we only getting older, the world getting colder, and I just wanna marry you, girl. Girl, put a diamond ring on you, girl. I just wanna marry you, take you across the border. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I just need my space. Sometimes you make me mad at you, and I do some crazy things.
You know, sometimes you just need that open road to define where you're going in life. Sometimes that's all it takes. Driving on this open road, I see no end. Driving on this open road, I know where my life began. So I'ma keep going. I'm a winner, I'ma keep going. Cause I'm not finished driving on this open road. I see no end. Driving on this open road, I see where my life begins. So I'ma keep going. I'm a winner, I'ma keep going. Cause I'm not finished driving on this open road. Open road, I see no end. I'm driving on this open road till me and the top meet again. But all I know is that I wanna be famous. All I know is that if I want it, I'ma name it. And driving on this road to get where my life begins. But I won't stop till I'm straight. I won't stop till my family can't wait. Driving on this open road, I see no end. Driving on this open road, I see no end. Driving on this open road, I know where my life begins. So I'ma keep going. I'm a winner, I'ma keep going. Cause I'm not finished driving on this open road. I see no end. Driving on this open road, I see where my life begins. So I'ma keep going. I'm a winner, I'ma keep going. Cause I'm not finished driving on this open road.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com.
Let's get off. Why are we not liking this?
Like the fire that needs the air, I won't burn unless you're there, you're there.
They hate you when you up, but they love it when you down. And when we run to town, they really gon' hate us now. The bitches don't bring riches, so the money I'm chasing. Fake love keep us on point, so we gotta embrace it. This is my ambition, I'm working towards a mission. Rubber grip on my smithing, plus it's holding an extension. I don't want a friendship if it ain't involving business. Fucking with my Skrilla, I'll leave a nigga missing. For all that sneak dissing, got a scope with heat vision. All that weak snitching, get you heat from deep distance. I'm a threat to my society, they label me a menace. Hitting shit, the only difference is I leave no witnesses. 30 in my magazine, what the issue is. Better think wise before you asking how I get my chips. Mind your business, kid, before you wind up dead. Hollow tips with lead, watch it spread like butter on bread. I'm a different breed mixed with lion and man. You don't get a second chance for trying my hand. 40 cal go bow, leave him right where he stand. I'm the ghost of the town, won't catch me on the land. I'm in the dip or the trap, trying to whip up a band. Carry the weight of my hood, starting to sink in the sand. Try to make it out the hood any way that I can. Whether it's getting a degree or shipping bricks in the van. Gotta get it, gotta have it, it's a hustle, a habit. Every day I'm in the kitchen trying to chop up the cabbage. Carrots on my neck, call me Bibby the Rabbit. Daddy raised a man, don't got time for no faggots. Only tell what you live, better preach what you practice. Keep the heat in my jacket, leave him stiff like a mattress. All that chatting and yapping, I get to clapping my ratchet. I'm finessing the taxes, hustling with a passion. Spent my life on the beat, my definition of rapping.
It's all me, nigga.
They hate you when you up, but they love it when you down. And when we run to town, they really gon' hate us now. The bitches don't bring riches, so the money I'm chasing. Fake love keep us on point, so we gotta embrace it. Niggas be switching on their homies every day, this shit not right. It's fucked up, that's the shit that make me wanna fight. A couple killers, gorillas that's quick to take your life. They on go like sick of me, dead by the night. He tried to run, they said fuck it, gave him a leg shot. Then ran down with the 40s and made his head pop. No pop block, but I walk the same with the hammer on me. No flashy nigga, I act the same when the camera's on me. Diamonds dancing like strippers, come try to scam us, homie. Reach for this, my blicky, gon' hit you clips like bananas, homie. They hate you when you up,
but they love it when you down.
And when we run the town, they really gon' hate us now.
The bitches don't bring riches, so the money I'm chasing.
Fake love keep us on point, so we gotta embrace it.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com.
Let's go.
Pussy nigga cross that line and I'ma pop em. I bet they apple go to screaming like an apple. Snort a line of China white and call it Gaga. Made in my ties like Frank Sinatra. Yeah. Aces loaded out the park, you know I knock it. Take over shit and now ain't nobody can stop us. I run my city like I'm Diddy with no problem. They want me dead, but money on my head like Frank Sinatra. We talk that boy over lobster, linguine and shrimp. Off top I pop 'em, bitch I ain't tussling with him. Couple bands on your brim, get you killed by your kin. Lord forgive me, I'm repenting for all of my sins. Cake walk on Broadway, dirty dancing again. I fuck this bitch 'cause me and Romeo never been friends. The nigga switch, I heard he snitch, only been 2 weeks in. Switching this and jumping ship, that's the pussy in him. Man down in that alley, where it all began. Cold world heavyweight on my shoulders again. Ain't no mistakes, amazing grace, I put that shit within. Ain't no regrets, just run me back, I do it all again. Pussy nigga cross that line and I'ma pop 'em. I bet they apple go to screaming like an apple. Snort a line of China white and call it Dada. Made me in my ties like Frank Sinatra. Yeah. Laces loaded out the park, you know I knock it. Take over shit and now ain't nobody can stop us. I run my city like I'm Diddy with no problem. They want me dead, but money on my head like Frank Sinatra. To the balcony, no editing anytime you make a scene.
Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio, Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio, Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio, Underworld Radio, come on. Underworld Radio.
jeans on with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got action, action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is
Underworld Radio is going heavy right now.
with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got
Let's keep it going, y'all.
action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is not my passion. Sitting pretty, money is the motive. I'm focused. Don't hang with too many, 'cause they
Shout out to Miss KK and Sylvia chilling in the building with me right now. Always holding me down in the underworld. Much love to y'all, ladies.
My pockets got my billet chains long and my money steady stacking. You lacking? Okay, I got action. And it's Gabrielle Nicole, so please don't call me Gabby. Mirror, mirror on the wall, now tell me who the baddest. Billie jeans on with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got action, action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is not my passion. Billie jeans on with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got action, action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is not my passion. If I see a duck, he get plucked, closed caption. My account fantastic. One check did a somersault, the other did a backflip. My money dramatic. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I be laughing. I just want the money, some more money, and the fashion. If your man don't got no cash, then he ain't up for grabbing. Gucci's in my pocket, no ranch, but I be dressing though. Baddest in the city, you know, and I'm the next to blow. Billie jeans on with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got action, action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is not my passion. Billie jeans on with a pocket full of Jacksons. Moonwalking to the bankroll, I got action, action, action. Flexing while I'm in traffic. Take your man and tax him, 'cause love is not my passion.
Mighty fucking long. It's full of twists and turns, so you know some shit's gon' go wrong. Oh, fast. I am just a man. I know it's hard to understand the dirt on my hands. I do what I can, a lot I can't do. I still do what I can't do for my fam and my crew. Dodging boys in blue, lost a lot of bulls in the zoo trying to survive, but they died, still arise, waiting for my time of judgment. Is meant for the times I crossed the line. Evil thoughts of the mind, corrupt design, sign of the times. What I've seen make me wish I would grind from the time I realize God's plan can't be recognized or patronized. You gotta keep faith and ride till you die. No need to cry, ask why I wait my fate on my demise till I rise to the skies. You can slip, you can slide, run but you can't hide. Nobody gets out alive. Underworld, gotta grab a hold of your life. Never sell your soul for stripes. All you get is strikes. Live trife, get stripe. What's your life like? Throw the first stone I birth. Thugs in harmony like flesh and bone. Just in my zone, I can't phone home since I woke. Yo, I feel so alone. Y'all don't hear me though. Like I'm a weirdo for knowing what I know. A lot more than you think I know. Need a head strength. That's why my pen bleed ink. Strongest link when we link sight to the mind. They will never understand what I'm saying, but in due time, tell me what did you find? Look in your mind. New design, old styles, time to climb. Let's shine. Mighty fucking long. It's full of twists and turns, so you know some shit's gon' go wrong. You can slip, you can slide, you can run, but you can't hide. Nobody gets out alive. Life is a highway and it's mighty fucking long. It's full of twists and turns, so you know some shit's gon' go wrong. You can slip, you can slide,
Protege Beats.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com.
Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big down nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big down nigga. Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big down nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big down nigga. Big bag on it, 20 rounds on it. I just went and bought a new set of carrots, I put 50 pounds on it. Yeah, baby mama love me, love to suck me. Talk about she wanna cuddle, but I'm allergic to all the bullshit, so I just get to the money. I burn a chicken, then I get it right back. She like to ride through the honey. Mama told me, baby, slow down, she love me. She don't want that to happen. But mama, when I was down, you had me, so I don't want you stressing for nothing. I thank God for all the blessings. I pray for niggas try to test me, like Scarface, I send a message. Don't label me a thug, I'm just aggressive. I'm a big dog who gon' chat me. I'm a big dog who gon' chat me. Got my young nigga running errands. You want that beef, we running heavy. I'm majorly trapping on the daily. I'm stuck in that bag, that's my crib. Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big dog nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big dog nigga. Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big dog nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big dog nigga.
Big dog, been ahead of the game since they kicked off. Be high as a cloud, nigga lift off. I'm on the play, fuck around, get picked off. Word around town, man, you clicks off. No hustle, that's why you hitting lit for. Every so real, tell me where you snitch, boy. Keep it real, man, you really is a bitch, boy. Begging ass bitch, make my dick soft. When I dead broke, nigga couldn't get none. Now I'm up, now acting like you want some. Hear my dick go, treat it like a dum-dum. Lick it real slow, rub it on your gum-gum. I'm from the country, made nigga on son nothing. Been a big dog, jumped off the push run. Gotta check now, man, I kinda like thumbing. Money like pussy, man, that shit keep coming. Been a hot winter, gonna be a cold summer. Won't capture the no keep going. When I was dead broke, man, it wasn't for me nothing. Now I'm up, now acting like a whole song. Tell my mama ain't nobody getting nothing. Tell the truth, that why nigga really thuggin'. Tell the truth, that why nigga really thuggin'.
Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big dog nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big dog nigga. Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big dog nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big dog nigga. Mama don't like the way that I'm living, she know I'm a big dog nigga. I keep my hand on the trigger, nigga be playing crisscross with you. The bitch is so dirty, can't trust no cover, she good, forgive me, y'all nigga. I'm stuck in that bag, I'm on the ass, cause I'm a big dog nigga.
Law in the building. You all ready? We in here. I'm B-Star. Smell the little ENT.
Whack rappers on the TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape? Kinda great when you keep putting fire out. I'm the only person that can put my fire out. We fired up, somebody call the firehouse. When I rap, man, people say quiet down. Law come to town, they shut down the airport. Way we move, make 'em wonder why we there for. Pharaoh goblins on my face, cost 2 bands. Hop in sedans, not made on this land. Nah, them the foreign joints. I got a plan all mapped out ready for me. I produce a whole gang of dudes to do their numbers. Every summer we chillin' with the pretty women. Got my brother on live showing how we living. Life in every day already automatic. We in the fly whips, double park with the hazards. It get graphic when I speak about my real life. Freestyle like a mixtape on site. Whack rappers on the TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape? We deserve non-stop on the radio. I spit a verse and they say I really brought it home. I'm in the club on the phone with the club owner. He say it paid me a little extra if I stay longer. To capacity and law still showing up. I'm sipping off 2 bottles, 1 cup. Didn't know I could make all this in one night. We stepping out the club when it's light outside. Early morning ventures. Customized van rolling like grandma. Lifestyle get publicized. I be star. FBI taking pictures like the paparazzi. Grimes plug where we meet about in Spanish Harlem. Causing carnage in the hood like a mad villain. But that's the roundabout me there, say your boy chillin'. Spilling liquor on kicks that cost a couple $100. On YouTube stunting, but a brother won it. Whack rappers on the TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape?
Zé Feliz. No honey. No honey.
All of these niggas be talking the talk just to give you that run around. I get the bag, then I flip it, you know that I'm putting my money down. She wanna fuck with me, I'm not surprised, cause you see I get money now. I fucked her one time, then I told her to go, cause I know how she get around. Left. I call you a lift where you better walk. You wasting my time, girl, you better talk. Sit there in silence, you looking lost. Man, I'm killing these hoes, you could get the truck. Left. I call you a lift where you better walk. You wasting my time, girl, you better talk. Sit there in silence, you looking lost. Man, I'm killing these hoes, you could get the truck. No love for these hoes, can't let you fuck up my profit. Niggas is hating, boy, you need to stop it. You reach in my pocket, I'm grabbing a rocket. Don't need to cock it, it's already loaded. I hit you one time and you already folded. Feds are all over the case and you know it. You gon' find it on me, I already sold it. It's been a minute, you pay for my time. You don't got money, I pay you no mind. You don't know nothing, don't peek in my window. We catch you sleeping, we shooting the blinds. Won't let no nigga come fuck up my shine. Won't let no bitch come and eat off of mine. You ain't work hard for this, you at the line. Following everyone else who was blind. She wanna roll with me, I need to go. Wanna get high, told her look out below. Are you attached to me? I need to know. Cause I'm wiping my ass when the shit hit the flow. Yes, I'm a bouncer, we don't got no ties. Yes, I'm a bouncer if you bringing up lies. Tell me the truth, look me dead in my eyes. Like resting in peace in the bed when he dies. Came in this game, I'm not ready to lose. How can I lose when I came up with nothing? Say you gon' shoot and I'm calling your bluff. Come through your block with the chopper, I'm thumping. I get the shooters, gon' turn on you quick. You gon' be sick, like damn, ain't that something? Even your bitch gonna choose if she pick. She made you religion, she out here for money. Damn. All of these niggas be talking the talk just to give you that run around. I get the bag, then I flip it, you know that I'm putting my money down. She wanna fuck with me, I'm not surprised, cause you see I get money now. I fucked her one time, then I told her to go, cause I know how she get around. Left. I call you a lift where you better walk. You wasting my time, girl, you better talk. Sit there in silence, you looking lost. Man, I'm killing these hoes, you can get the truck. I call you a lift where you better walk. You wasting my time, girl, you better talk. Sit there in silence, you looking lost. Man, I'm killing these hoes, you can get the truck. Yes, sir.
We are going in right now. This is Underworld Radio with your boy Old Styles, yes. Hopefully y'all enjoying the show. Like, share, follow, do all that good shit. We're gonna make this shit go viral. Underworld Radio, let's go.
Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, do it all I survive. Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, do it all I survive. Go hard, go home. Some live, some gone. Young king, my throne, my hood, my home. Had highs, had lows, had bread, been broke. So weed, so dope, smoke dope, snuck coke. Hit good, took losses, been a worker, been a boss. Fat boy, Rick Ross, get money or get lost. Big chain, what it costs, big cross, hot sauce. some hard, some soft, some solid, some talk. Fat ass, little waist, all gas, no brakes. Some love me, some hate, some real, some fake. Look good, smoke good, big diamonds on the wood, big cars, big bars, moving through the city like stars. Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, through it all I survive. Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, through it all I survive. Had it all, got raw, cooked soft, made it hard. Little nigga, big heart, might shoot you in your front yard. Fuck his mama, fuck his daddy. They gon' bury me on a Saturday. Turn a cutlass to a caddy, turn a condo to a palace. Seen good, seen bad, seen pussy, seen ass. Back shot, pussy good, good dick, big wood. Can't stop, won't stop. Got away, got popped. Been free, been locked. Commissary, green dot. Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, through it all I survive. Everything I live for, everything I die for, everything I ride for, everything I cry for, everything that I try. Thank God I'm alive. Take a look in my eyes, through it all I survive.
We going too hard right now on them, y'all. If you watching the archive of this, share this archive, man. We going hard on them tonight. Industry artist spotlight, Cool Styles, Underworld Radio, New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. This is what we do. I'm getting these bugs out right now. Soon we gonna start going full throttle, man. Let's keep it moving, y'all.
I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I want more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you. I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I want more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you, I go, yeah. Martina, call her my Aquafina. I wish I didn't need her. Now baby like my ether, hot cold like last year. Baby, pull up. Where the fuck was you at last year? With you, I go, yeah. Now you chasing. I was waiting. Wasn't fucking with me, then girl. You so faking. Now I'm like beep. Who got the keys to the Jeep? All I ever wanted was your time, girl. Counting down the moments till you're mine, girl. Now I'm like beep. So rolling out in the Jeep. I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I want more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you. I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I want more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you, I go, yeah. With you, I go, yeah. With you, I go, yeah. Believe it, baby, so beneath her. I wasn't stressed about it, now she got me like fever. I'm lost in a matrix, gimme pills. She Neo in the matrix, the way that shorty kills. Now I'm raping, no more racing. Looking at you in the rear view, then my heart is breaking. Now I'm like beep. Who got the keys to the Jeep? Girl, you got me caught up and I'm sick for you. One thing will make me better is that love from you. Now I'm like beep. Me and baby rolling in the Jeep, yeah. I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I'm a more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you. I'm on a cloud with you, higher than I ever been, and yeah, I know. Baby got the pills for me, and I want more. I don't know no chill with you, I go with you, I go, yeah. With you, I go, yeah. With you, I go, yeah.
Live in the building, y'all. Let's keep it going, man. You can't tell me y'all don't feel what we doing right now. Shouts to the priority artists we got going right now. My priority artist is the hardest. Fuck your FM, man. Let's go.
Talking that talk, cause jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit. You niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this. Coast to coast, let's go. You really want your beef with, in my city, no lucky.
Jit be talking that talk, cause jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit. You niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this, and I'm gon' let you have it. You better watch who you beef with, in my city, no lucky. He really ain't on that bitch shit, get that nigga a salad. I swear that he pussy as hell, had a date for a peppy. FaceTime straight to hell, bet that they get the caption. Young niggas, they shooting the tail, going live with that action.
Jit be talking that talk, cause jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit, you niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this, and I'm gon' let you have it. You better watch who you beef with, in my city, no lacking.
Jit be talking that talk, then jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit, you niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this, and I'm gon' let you have it. You better watch who you beef with, in my city, no lacking. Jit be talking that money shit, cause Jit really got it. Jit gotta stick with a big dick, marking nuts on the back end. You end up sleeping in PG, yeah, you know how we rockin'. Bullet hit, you better breathe, bitch. Now what's up with that rapper?
Jit be talking that talk, cause jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit, you niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this, and I'm gon' let you have it. You better watch who you beef with, in my city, no lacking.
Jit be talking that talk, then jit by that action. Jit be really on that street shit, you niggas be rapping. Let me find out that you sneak this, and I'm gon' let you have it. You better watch who you beef with, in my city, no lacking.
You already know who it is, the FMF. It's supposed to hear my
Ice cream, bring that ice, boy.
They said, Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I'm just trying to make a bang roll, never fold, bitch. And you wonder why I'm cold? Well, now you should know, bitch. Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I'm just trying to make a bang roll, never fold, bitch. And you wonder why I'm cold? Well, now you should know, bitch. They said, Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I don't give a fuck about these hoes. No, I don't, bitch. Cause my girl give me brain like a pro. On the road, bitch. None of your niggas can stop me, huh? Nobody can stop me, huh? Got my whole team beside me, huh? Nigga, do you fucking copy, huh? Head niggas try to rob me, huh? Head niggas try to pop me, huh? Y'all pussy niggas just mad cause your ass ain't fucking sloppy, huh? They said, Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I'm just trying to make a bang roll, never fold, bitch. And you wonder why I'm cold? Well, now you should know, bitch. Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I'm just trying to make a bang roll, never fold, bitch. And you wonder why I'm cold? Well, now you should know, bitch. Nigga been through a lot of pain and now just not the same, huh? Hardcore like D. Russell, got ice in my veins, huh? I don't care about a lot, no nigga, I just wanna do my thing, huh? I'm so different, all y'all other niggas so the same, huh? Y'all Damon Wayans, y'all some major pains, trying to steal my thing. Tell me what you gain, not a damn thing, you ain't gain fame. Y'all niggas ain't stay up on my lane, that proves my point that all y'all niggas plain, that's that, huh? They said, Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. Maybe cause I'm trying to get on the road, selling shows, bitch. I'm just trying to make a bang roll, never fold, bitch. And you wonder why I'm cold? Well, now you should know, bitch. Zai, why you so cold? I don't know, bitch. cause I'm trying to get on the road. Selling shows, bitch, I'm just trying to make a bang roll. Never fold, bitch, and you wonder why I'm cold. Well, now you should know, bitch.
Will Sully, the Catacomb Movement. Legion, what up? Main and Medicine, what up? Yeah, yo, fully loaded. I've been a bully and they know it. I'm no rookie, I'm the coldest, so they put me with the soldiers. Bulldozer, no doja, don't get your dirt blanket pulled over. This here's the takeover, break over. I pull up no yoga, they call me the chain smoker. Back to back, lay your ass down like it's a layover. Sully the chainsaw, I'm giving them makeovers. Breaker, the bomb's gon' drop, debate over. Soon as I nosedive, I thank God that I'm fly. I'm so alive, I'm a walking gold mine with the shine. A cosign, what for? I'm making them up raw. Whole time we up north, up four, kicking the doors, toe the line. You ain't never heard a flow like mine. My whole grind, every sentence, gotta go with the crime. All the loyal niggas with you like, go with the rhymes, go with the times. Sully shit, 9.9. That's my old 3 lines. Before I wrote rewind, I focused the third eye. Now it's go, me time. I'ma keep the shit short, cause I got no free time. I'm a full grown wolf, it's not a go for felines. They said the bars done died, well I'm bringing it back to life. I'm smoking up the block, Ghost Rider back on his bike. Sully got the shit to get Pookie back on his pipe. She bougie, summer coming, put her back to the swipe. Since being nice is back, we jacking up the price. And no, we don't price match the competition light. My composition is right, the opposition is tight. I'm the best motherfucker you heard in your effing life.
BBM, what in their records that's skin? Hey. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the baddest of them all? I don't even think that that's a question, bitches. China raw, slim waist, cute face, ass fat, got it all. 5'6", by the bed, got my own, I don't fall. I'm a trill bitch, keep it real bitch, I don't gotta fall. Street chick, been through deep shit, I don't follow laws. Bitches acting tough, but bitch, you a duck. See why they mad, cause you bad? Smoking on this gas, I'ma shake my ass. I know why they mad. I'm on my own shit. I'm the wave, I'm the drip. Come through changing the whip. I be fluxing on these bitches on some calm shit. BBM, fuck they talking about? Bad bitch mafia. My ass fat, he hit it from the back. I'm on my own shit, you got the wrong bitch. I drip harder than these niggas and I'm harder than these bitches. I'm too real, I can't be fake, that's some fool shit. Raw ain't a bad bitch, fuck you stupid. Come through, switching lanes to my music. Hopped out designer, this that new shit. Hey.
We do what we want, niggas do what they tell. I spend some racks on designer clothes. If a nigga touch me, then he gotta go. I'ma hold it down for the gang though. Niggas pussy, niggas lame though. I'm serving wreck through the lane, bitch. My block like the drive through. I be rocking with some killers. I be rolling with gorillas. Shit, my back it got heavy, my bitch she got bad. Chop a nigga, leave him done. Bottom line, nigga, period. Bitch, I'm rolling with C-Pro. Bitch, I'm trying to get drugs. You know big dough won't go raw. Can't easy eat me. Niggas can't see me. Mirror on the wall with a chopper. Let on me now, I'm too cocky. Knock a nigga out like Rocky. All I need is one mic. All I need is one hammer. To hang a nigga like a banner. Cut curl like bananas. Shoot a nigga like a camera, no cap. Shoot a nigga like a camera, no cap.
That's what I'm talking about, man. My artist is happy, man. Fuck your FM, man. Let's go.
We live in the building, Underworld Radio. Who we got on the line?
Boy, it's your boy Live Drew, man. Fuck with the homies, man.
Yeah.
Gang, man. I just put my heart on it real quick. Good.
Live in the building, Underworld shit, man.
It's the hook. All I ask is what you want. It is motherfucking burger. Yeah. I'ma grind, I'ma give it to you. You just gotta take my word, girl. Yeah. If you want me to leave, let me know. You just gotta say the word, girl. Say the word, let me know. I don't want to, but you push me away. I'm a G, I'm a swerve, girl. Yeah. Look, I'm flipping pages, I can't think straight. Hey. Got me hustling, talking to you in the same day. Yeah, it's on you, let the games play. That promise to keep it real and stay the same way. Damn, but you know I ball like Jordan. Trap jump just like it's sporting. You know the moves be calling on my phone, leave me alone. You know I ball like Jordan, try jump just like it started. You know them hoes be calling on my phone, leave me alone. Try slow down, but life goes on, I just gotta keep it like that. Look, all I ask is what we want, it is motherfucking work, girl. Yeah. I'ma grind, I'ma give it to you. You just gotta take my word, girl. Yeah. If you want me to leave, let me know. You just gotta say the word, girl. Say the word, let me know. I don't want to, but you push me away. I'm a G, I'm a swerve, girl. Yeah.
Shouts to my homie Lodge Rule, man. Definitely turning up for us with a freestyle on the line. Shouts to you, brother. Let's go. Loving it, man. That's how we do. Underworld Radio, New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. I'm promoting these artists on a larger scale than you know. Whatever site you on right now, tuning into the show, we on 7 other sites right now. I had to take off a few sites, so we no longer on 10 sites. We on 7 sites now, so it still is what it is. You know, I got a lot of followers, a lot of viewers from different countries, from different parts of the world, all tuning in through this platform right here. So that's why I keep saying to the artists out there, to the promoters, to the people that's trying to network and the people that's looking for a platform, that's what I'm building right now, a platform, which is basically a station. My dream is to have a lot of different shows on this station, you know what I'm saying? At least 20 different shows that come on this UTV station. You know, so that's basically what I'm building at Underworld Television, Underworld Radio, and that's what we're doing with these priority artists. So shouts to all the priority artists that trust me, you know, to play their music. Like I said, most of these artists on here I know personally. They're my peoples like that. I get mad love from them, and I show them mad love back. So that's what it's all about. We're gonna be doing the Make Debate This show, which is coming up soon. Where we're gonna debate a lot of different topics. Talk about politics. Talk about bug out online. It's gonna be less music, more talking. You know what I'm saying? So for the people out there that wanna basically get in my head or have me get in your head, that's what the show's gonna be about. It's gonna be called Debate This, and when I throw the topic up, you watch a video, listen to a track or something, basically, what we're gonna be debating on, and we're gonna debate on it in the chat room. So I'm gonna be working a lot of different chats at once. So bear with me on that. But shouts to KK and Sylvia for hanging out with me in the chat room. My man Lane is in the Periscope chat room chilling for me right now. Shout outs to everybody that's been coming through all the sites. Anybody, if you're on YouTube, make sure you sub to me on YouTube. If you're on OK, I know a lot of y'all on OK. I don't even see how y'all be tuning in, but shouts to y'all for tuning in because it's an all Russian site. Nothing but Russian, so shouts, but they want to hear hip hop too, so But I'm basically platforming on all these different sites. VK, I'm on there too. Twitch, I'm on there. All these sites that I'm broadcasting to right now. That's why I gotta, but like I said, if y'all got videos that y'all wanna, basically put out there and get out there, especially if they on some old political, what's going on in the world right now. We got a lot of BS happening right now. A lot of BS that's seems uncontrollable. Seems like there's nothing we could do. But what this platform is going to be for us to basically talk about these, we could utilize that, and that's what this show is all about. So follow me, subscribe, like, share. Show support in what I'm trying to do. I see my views is going up right now as I'm talking too. So shouts to everybody for that. On all my sites, that's dope right there. Like I said, the way I'm doing it is basically the broadcast is to people all around the world all at once. And we could really start using this to talk to each other and do things, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, I be having bugs. I feel like online be watching me, peeping out what I'm trying to do, and they trying to shut me down. I don't know, but I'll keep moving. I'm going to keep going, keep doing what I do. You know how we do it, man. It's Underworld, New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. And, this is just I'm going to keep going like this. So we're going to play some more tracks, get back into it a little heavy right now, and that. But shouts to everybody that came through, hang out with your boy. We're gonna go into my main artist. This is my artist that I definitely promote on a daily basis, every day, all day. You will never hear me doing anything without this man, Commotion Rhyme Flow, CEO of Fresh Flow ENT. This is my homie right here. He about to drop this Hood Superhero Volume 3 joint on it, hosted by me. And it's just about to be so heavy in the street. So we're going to be playing that on the show, consecutive, whole album, and rotation on the show. So shout out to Commotion. We're going to get into that and, you know, underworld shit. Let's go.
Underworld.
What's up, hood superhero? Spreading love, knowledge, power, and the mirror. What's up, hood superhero? Spreading love, knowledge, power, and the mirror.
Everybody call cause you know I'm gonna deliver. When it's crunch time and you know I'm gonna deliver. Got a nice package and you know I'm gonna deliver. My words by bond and you know I'm gonna deliver. Everybody call cause you know I'm gonna deliver. When it's crunch time and you know I'm gonna deliver. Got a nice package and you know I'm gonna deliver. My words by bond and you know I'm gonna deliver. Hate, love, but I'm loving the hate. Even if my own fam doesn't relate. This community let me come to the gates. Brother, cause the first take when I come to debate. Nah, Stephen A, your masculine, me telling them kick props to hell with them big shots to the melon. If you grab for the gun, look up fast, you will run. Face a capital one, chase the back, I'm the one with it. I won't quit, I'm staying committed to staying independent of lanes who wanna cater the image, the gamers, the gimmicks. Even our creators and mimics are breaking records, the limits, all that, but saying again, it's like, hey, the one with the bag I am, hey, the one in the flag that spam, okay? Don't try to tag that man with the double F, fresh trippy swag for the fan. On your mark, get set, go, and we win it. Drop them things that keep your head spinning like vertigo. When you heard the flow, when you stereo, first to blow your top off, convertible, best in the show. Models popping, they bubble bud, some of the ropes, got them hopping, no double dutch. Now I got a late one to drive, we gon' make us wait, that shade 45. Everybody call cause you know I'm gonna deliver. When it's crunch time and you know I'm gonna deliver. Got a nice package and you know I'm gonna deliver. My words by bond and you know I'm gonna deliver. Everybody call cause you know I'm gonna deliver. When it's crunch time and you know I'm gonna deliver. Got a nice package and you know I'm gonna deliver. My words by bond and you know I'm gonna deliver.
Coast to Coast Mixtapes.com. Let's go.
Why are we not fucking this?
Underworld.
Getting twisted. So rock on deck, Cardi on deck, Goose is next. Feel the effects, got me feeling like ooh. Oh, I know I'm lifted. My eyes is red, head is down. Don't even know what's going on around me, and I'm getting lifted. All I know, this is what I want. This is what I'm on, and she's screaming out ooh. Baby, I be lifted when I'm with you. What you do to me, baby, walking you, everything and ooh. I think I'm twisted. I talk too much, I stole my role. If you don't, then you already know. Gotta scream it out, ooh. Oh baby, this is the next round. I guarantee it's gonna put you down. Gotta scream it out, ooh. Get twisted, get rock on deck, party on deck, get twisted, what do you expect?
Tonight's the night, so we about to turn up. Tonight's the night, so we about to turn up.
What do you expect? Get rock on deck, party on deck, what do you expect?
Tonight's the night, so we about to turn up. Tonight's the night, so we about to turn up. Turn up.
It's my way or the highway. It's always been my way. My way is the highway.
My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. touchdown is okay. Trap house doing numbers, serving 4 ways. Big guns at the spot so we feel safe. Make the wrong move, nigga, then it's gunplay. Gunplay around my way like every day. Niggas play cockroaches, then they getting sprayed. Tony Montana lifestyle, we okay. Big guns, big money, nigga, I'm self-made. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. Niggas know I'm ballin', boy, I'm talking high stakes. Got enough of dope to feed my whole team a plate. Been a boss man, all I do is elevate. Drop the Bentley Spurs, now they finna play a hate. Been had hundreds way before the big face. Road run all summer on the highway. Trap doing numbers every day of payday. Duffel bag full of millions, we getting paid. Big guns at the spot, don't make us spray. Tied in with the mob, so we self-made. The type of niggas gotta always get the cake. Money, 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 that be my way. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns. My way, highway, get paid every day. Money, road run, big cars, big guns.
Ness, fresh flow.
He just started testing, but we hauled them all. Now they praying for a blessing like an altar call. The way we stay investing, we done bought them all. Our section steady flexing, we be off the wall.
I'ma make the kitty pop and the titty flop. Me go silly with the rock with a steady bop. Eco-friendly with the guap, get the fetty up. I throw a party at my spot, I don't need a yacht. Bring it to a city cop with a semi-glock. I'ma take it to the top, moving up a notch. Wanna walk inside my sock, better tell you not. Because I guarantee we not the same sleeping box. Either grown off aside, my corpus collapse. He's telling me to reconcile with the thing we got. Keep my followers in line like it's Vietnam. Ain't no telling anytime, it can be the bomb. Open up and let me slide right into your mind. That's the government on crime, I'ma leave it blind. Can't speak for all, saying we off the wall. I call the oop on y'all in due time.
Excited to drop the flow when the beat drops. I go off. Get on the stage, I grab the mic and set the show off. Put your hands in the air, get prepared, I'm about to flame on them. Put up the gloves and ring the bell, I spank the bang on them. Go ahead, clap for a queen. Feeling kinda popular, living a dream. Pop in the game like a dress for the scene. Cause I'm owning this name, homegrown in the jeans. Slow up the flow, pause, let me breathe. Said the movement, ask my team. Gotta go hard, Wu-Tang cause the cream can't be compared. I'm a new type of breed, dope. Say my name 3 times, you should prepare for the smoke. I put the beat in a choke hold. I'm not letting go, cause I want it. Pull up, turn up, pull, what's good?
Women DMing and be on tilt. Do your body good, it be like milk. Rats up on the wall, it's beyond built. Keep it 100, we be like Will. Plaques up on the wall, it be on tilt. Stacks up on the wall, it be on stilts. I dress it like yay, it's all killed. You get it like yay, cause y'all killed this Philly just off the wall. 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 Off the wall.
Haters try to test me, so I shot them all. Now they in the underworld like a Pokeball. Show no mercy, had them pussy cats against the wall. Crack backs like backpacks, I'm going off of y'all. Going for a minute, now I'm back in this. JFK rap activist. Make sure you tag me if you capture this. Kicks, watch how I master this. Now you know who the master is. Leave both in your mattresses. Flexing with my team is hazardous. Why you suckers really wanna clash with us? Cause this headshot, like the slingshot. Shots the slingshot. Suckers backing down, but we not. Watch this fresh flow spit out like Tide Pods in my mouth. GMP in Jersey in the house.
and we wildin'. Ride around in my city. Pockets like they got hickeys. Got a Glock tucked in my swishy. Tell a bitch drop and give me 50. And go come and get me. Throw a shot back just like a frisbee. Rock a top hat like I'm Biggie. I advise you niggas don't diss me. Inside chicks, you so frisky. Yeah, I know it's so risky. See notes around you so crispy. You come back around like 360. I'm short, black, and I'm chubby. In my hammer pants, you can't touch me. Got a bad hoe, handcuff me. Keep a knife like Crocodile Dundee.
I can buy my love or loyalty, my soul is overpriced. Life be like B, roll the dice when you're better than a shooter. You know he shots, keep saying he blaming, but only me mugging and spamming your Grammy about that emoji life. But get him in person, or better reverse of that negative person's a poltergeist. Body coated in a winter soldier with no coat when he been in the trench. Like a mama busted open for the coach and then her son is still sitting the bench. That's dry bones and the level that I'm on. You can't track with an iPhone, not a rock star. I'm a fly drone, a loud rock bar, leave your mind blown. Bouncing off the wall, the spot to be jumping no sky zone. This man boasts Thanos rapping, universe is snapping to the infinity time stone. Not to consume a doom and gloom, your crew buffoons, your goony goons or looney tunes. Boom boom and spoon of fruity loons, your fancy pinch, your mans be pansy blooming June. So many bloody moves on Zoom, run on a few, jumping into the booze. Other dudes with another excuse, hitting people up with the news. Got a couple of views, bumping the bruise. I refuse, I got something to prove. So I'm gonna use and abuse, and the drama ensues. A lot of the odds and the ooze, shoes that I'm not gonna lose. Rockin', I got it poppin' and hopping and flagging the pew, dropping the clues, bombs around with who with you. Haters started testing, but we hauled them all. Now they praying for a blessing like an altar call. The way we stay investing, we done bought them all. Our sections steady flexing, we be off the wall. Women DMing and be on tilt. Do your body good, it be like milk. Racks up on the wall, it's beyond built. Keep it 100, we be like Will. Plaques up on the wall, it be on tilt. Stacks up on the wall, it be on stills. I dress it like, yeah, it's all kill. You get it like, yeah, cause y'all killed this Philly just off the wall. 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 Off the wall.
That's what it is. That's what it do. New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. Hold on, man. Excellent show. Shouts to everybody that stopped through, hung out with us. This show definitely went hard right here. I got to go real nice on all my sites. So far, I didn't get banned on those sites. You know, I'm playing my indie artists, so that should be a good thing online. Shouts to all the indie artists. Hopefully, we've received some more indie artists, some new ones from all around. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get artists from all around the world that's basically coming through and getting on rotation and showing support, love and support. And we have people from all around the world that basically can fuck with this site, and we can, you know, link up and network and do things, make things happen. You feel me? So that's what we're doing right now in the New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. Your boy Old Styles. Like I said, in a minute, Debate This is gonna start up. When Debate This start up, I want all the open-minded, woke people of the world to come through and hang out in the Debate This show. I know it's going to be some ignorance that's going to stop through. We're going to handle that accordingly. It's online. We're not going to stress it, but it is going to happen. So, as well as the banning and the blockings and, you know, the obstacles to come. But the fan base is the first thing we need. So, for all of y'all out there that's looking for something like that, it's basically a show. But we basically going to talk about things. And, you know, we got the request lines where you could call in and personally talk. And we got the chat rooms open coast to coast, hood to hood, everywhere. Where we can talk on these politics and put some shit in the air. So I know y'all see I smoke, I drink on air. This is some hood shit that we on right now. And we're going to keep it underground and hood. It's like the Underground Railroad for the internet. You know what I'm saying? So for all my peoples out there that's tuning in, that see what I'm doing, that's following what I'm doing, nothing but love for y'all, because that's what I need. I need people that's gonna follow this, you know, and gonna understand what I'm trying to do. But a lot of people feel like it's not needed. A lot of people don't even understand what's going on, you feel me? But it's very much so needed to have a place where we could link up, network, and put some shit together, you know what I'm saying, as one. And I hear a lot of people talk about unity and coming together and supporting black business and supporting, but we're gonna see right now. We're going to put a lot of black businesses up here. This is the first black business y'all can support. And that only takes a like, a share, you know, a sub, whatever it may be. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for nobody to send me money unless you buying a T-shirt, unless you buying a mix CD. You know what I'm saying? That's how you support the underworld. We got donations, but that's for if you want to give them out. You know what I'm saying? But we're not asking y'all to do nothing but tune in and tell a friend to tune in. That's what we're asking for right now, because we're going to do a lot more. And like I said, I've been testing it out. I've been testing it for months now, testing out how I'm going to do this, because soon I'll be back in New Jersey, NYC, Philly, all my spots that I travel and hit up for the artists. And I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff out there. So anybody that's looking to get their video on the show, to get, their music played on a radio show, or their video played on a video show, or get an interview going on, or, you got a commercial, you want to promote it, you want me to shoot a commercial, whatever it may be, we definitely here. Don't use this number though, the 407-204-0033. That's only for when we live. And as you can see, I got the lines closed right now, but when we have the lines open, y'all can call in, and express your opinions on things and talk about things. So that's basically what we're trying to do right now. I understand I got people on a lot of sites right now that's watching me and listening to what I'm saying right now. And I want y'all to follow me on the other sites that I'm on. Like I said, right now, this right here that you're watching is being broadcast on 7 other sites all at once. You got people on 7 different sites watching it in the chat room, chatting, and things of that nature. So whatever site you on, find another site that's UTB station and follow that site. So when they start banning and blocking and shit, y'all could be up to date and follow the movement. You know what I'm saying? But that's basically what this is about. I'm playing an indie artist right now. Soon I'm going to be doing the Debate This show. We're going to do the Mark of the Beast show. And we're going to be doing a lot of different things. So follow us, man. It's the New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. Your host, Old Styles, JFK of Jersey. And, we're going to take it out like that, man. Let's go.
Underworld Radio. Come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Come on. Underworld Radio. Underworld Radio. Come on. Underworld Radio.